Thank you for spending another midweek moment with the Wisconsin Property Taxpayers. I'm Paul Rozeski. Today is Wednesday, November 26th, 2025. Before we look at some headlines, let's look to the week ahead. Happy Thanksgiving. Depending on when you're listening to this, I hope it is or was awesome. Hopefully, if you travel, it's done by Friday or you wait until Sunday so that way you avoid being out in the middle of our first solid winter snowstorm. Also, a heads up that while you're hunkered down in the middle of 6+ inches of snow, you can expand your horizons since it's Hip Hop History Month this month. In the podcast this week, we look at a new idea to try and fill a hole in the DNR's budget and give some updates on deer hunting season, but we also sniff out irony in a couple stories, Republicans sounding like Democrats, and how, even despite its best intentions, how things turn out when the government gets involved and tries to help. After all that, we wrap it up with an American historical legend that once traveled 160 miles on foot in 4 days through the colonial wilderness. It's not an exaggeration. Do the math, that's 40 miles a day, starting in Ohio and ending in Kentucky to warn a vulnerable fort of settlers about an impending attack. Place your bets on who it is, and in the meantime, let's jump into some news together. So let's start with a story that's going to be kind of fun. We're going to start with a budget deficit, propose some bills, and end up with this story getting stored in the "you can't make this stuff up" file. I love it. So the DNR right now has a $16 million budget deficit in its fish and wildlife account. So some lawmakers are looking at solutions, and what are the options? Either cut back expenses or increase income, right? Well, what do you think our government officials would prefer to do? How about Governor Evers? His budget proposal had pretty decent increases in hunting registration fees, which was criticized and taken out by the Joint Finance Committee. Well, the problem's still sitting there. So this week, a few lawmakers are circulating a bill to do what? Cut some spending? No, because the legislature doesn't really have the power to do that. So the idea is to create some new permits and get some additional fees coming into the DNR. Each of these ideas are separate bills, so we can pick and choose what could be implemented. The activities that would require, quote, modest permit fees when being done on state-owned land and waters. Here you go. Hiking, bicycling, cross-country skiing. You may need a permit for foraging or the operation of a non-motorized boat. I mean, really, a permit to wander through the woods hunting for morel mushrooms. Who's going to wander through the woods to enforce that? Here is a quote from one of the bill's authors, quote, "For years, hunters and anglers have shouldered the burden of rising fees whenever the DNR needs to fund its operations," which historically accurate, and it's a reasonable argument. Since hunting participation has been on a slow but gradual decline over the decades, it will continue to not be the answer to get caught up. But here's where it gets better. And this is a quote from that same lawmaker. "It's time for everyone who benefits from Wisconsin's natural resources to pay their fair share," unquote. Now, maybe it's just me, but that is a Republican lawmaker conveniently sounding a lot like a Zoran Mamdani Democrat when the argument suits the expanding of government taxation. You just can't make this stuff up. In other news, let's keep hanging around with the DNR. The opening weekend of deer hunting season brought in 48,000 antlered deer. That is a lot of bucks. That was about the same as last year, but up 7% from last year is the antlerless harvest. And that puts opening weekend at a grand total of 91,600 deer harvested. That is definitely a lot of venison. Also, opening weekend, the DNR reported what they call 2 firearm-related hunting incidents. Unfortunately, one of them was a fatality, the first one since 2022. The second one, fortunately, was not a fatality, but unfortunately, and according to their press release, a 57-year-old male was a victim of a gunshot to his buttock while walking into a field to go deer hunting. The victim was transported to the hospital and treated for injury. The incident is under investigation. In other news, here's a couple headlines to keep it light since we're rolling into a holiday weekend. A headline from last week. Man faces charges for attempting to smuggle parakeets in underwear. Luckily, the birds were heavily sedated. Otherwise, I don't think the guy or the parakeets would have survived. How about this headline? Americans skipping Ozempic to indulge at Thanksgiving. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at that one. And another headline, this one's from last month. I can't remember if I mentioned it. Something that has become a bit of a tradition every quarter is this update. The board of directors of Milwaukee-based WEC Energy Group, parent company of 7 power companies including We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service, declared its quarterly cash dividend of $89.25 per share on the company's common stock. It will be paid on December 1st, 2025 to shareholders of record on November 14th, 2025. It goes on, this marks the 333rd consecutive quarter dating back to 1942 that the company will have paid a dividend to its stockholders. And just in case it has slipped our mind, don't forget how a year ago, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, they're fighting for us, overseeing the energy companies, approved a $733 million rate increase for the customers of We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service over 2025 and 2026. On a related note, before those increases even took effect, a report in December of 2024, just before then, from the Wisconsin Industrial Energy Group, basically laid out that Wisconsin, which had the lowest energy rates in the Midwest 25 years ago, now has the second highest residential rates and the third highest industrial rates in the Midwest. It's funny how in the wake of Enron, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission was established to eliminate the marketplace of competitive energy companies because we saw how things could get manipulated and go sideways. Instead, we should have single companies accountable to the government and the PSC to keep them in check. Here's a rhetorical question. How does that seem to be working for us? And finally, in the spirit of the outdoors that we started with, I leave you with a quote from American historical legend Daniel Boone, who said, quote, "In this world of liberty, every man should carve his own wilderness path," unquote. Get out there and enjoy nature. Even though this weekend carving a path is going to be snow blowing or shoveling, try to have some fun with it too. Have a great second half of your week, and as always, thanks for listening. The Wisconsin Property Taxpayers Inc. is a nonpartisan membership organization consisting of thousands of small business, farm, and homeowner members in every tryptophan-loving corner of the state. Founded in 1985, the organization is committed to providing its members with up-to-date information, legislative advocacy, and exclusive cost-saving benefits. Find out how to join at WPTOnline.org/join.